Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Dave Savage, and welcome to our 9 o'clock Tuesday morning call. Every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we're here to lead, to deliver value. We're dedicated to your professional and your personal success. And I am going to go through a few slides and do a little bit of talking at the beginning of this call of a presentation that I'm going to be doing at Achieving Leadership Excellence here in Hawaii tomorrow. I'm here with Todd Duncan's event. And as I was preparing to deliver my presentation to about 50 combination of super top producers, folks that are closing over $50 and $100 million, a number of CEOs, I just kept landing on 2015 is a year for change. So I'm going to talk a lot about that as I frame today's call and I bring our special guest Anthony in. But when you really think about what we do as loan officers, I still think as an industry, we need to take it to an even higher level. We need to go from price to advice. We need to go from, quoting rates and just being like every other salesperson to being a value creator. And I think everybody really needs to audit what we're doing. And I'll make the case for that in just a minute. So I'm excited to bring in Anthony. Anthony, what is this, like about the 4th or 5th time you've been a guest here in the Mortgage Coach community? Anthony, I think you're on mute, my brother. All right, well, Anthony is here. He will jump in. Marcy, if you can text Anthony, make sure he's not having any technical issues. And Anthony, if you can hear me when you get back into the call, just jump out. So I do want to put a big push in for next week. I'm going to be interviewing Darren Hardy. We're going to be talking about the essential insights on how to thrive as an entrepreneur. And I think it'll be really clear and obvious why being a successful entrepreneur, being a successful loan officer, being a successful realtor, they all align and they all connect the same. By the way, Anthony, I see that you're not on mute, but we're not hearing you. So you may want to call in or go into your computer. Try something different there. Also, the following week, we have Tom Ferry. And Marcy, if you can confirm that you guys can hear me. Marcy, if you can confirm that I'm not the one that's tuned out here.
Hi, Dave. You're coming through clear.
Okay, perfect. So the following week, we have Tom Ferry. So, I mean, we've just got all kinds of greatness happening in Mortgage Coach this month and as we close out the month. So I wanted to just put a push, share this on Facebook. Make sure you like it. Make sure you order the book and read the book. Also, our president, Joe Patur, is at the LMA event for the next few days. So if one of the executives from your company is attending the LMA event right now, today and tomorrow, make sure they get some time with Joe Patur in our suite. Just reach out to me, either private message me in Facebook or email me at dave@mortgagecoach, and we would love to get as much face time with you guys as possible and your leadership team. So, Anthony, I'm going to try to pull you in one more time. Are you there, my friend?
I believe I am. I believe I'm here.
You are there. We hear you, brother.
Okay, awesome.
Good. Well, hey, it's good to have you. I'll do a more formal introduction in just a minute, but I know you're a regular author, a regular contributor to Success Magazine, so I'm sure you're pretty familiar with Darren's work.
I am. He does terrific work, especially for entrepreneurs and especially for thinking about how you take your business to the next level. And I would recommend if you can be there, be there. If you have the ability to bring a guest, bring a real estate agent, bring somebody there who's going to value, you should absolutely deliver them to Darren's call next week. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I promise you guys, if you come and check us out next week, not only will you be more successful, but your partner and your realtor that you bring to that call will. So let's start making the case for why some of the new compliance changes are just a tremendous opportunity for Mortgage Coach loan officers. I do believe that as we pivot and as this market changes, some loan officers are going to gain market share, some loan officers are going to lose market share. And I also truly believe in this quote, being someone that has trained, touched thousands of loan officers, here at Leadership Excellence, Achieving Leadership Excellence, we have about 50 mortgage professionals. And one thing that they all have in common is this quote: they're not illiterate. They are unable to unlearn certain things that they're doing and relearn other things. And so when you really look at the hallmark and what the best of the best are doing. They're paying attention to their market conditions. Some of those are economic, and in changing economic conditions, they adjust what they do. They stop doing certain things. They start doing other things, and they just unlearn and relearn new things. So if the way you're doing business today is the same way you were doing business 5 years ago, that's a problem. And even if the way you're doing business today is the same way you're doing it a year ago, there's a better way. So I am creating the theme of my conversation tomorrow with this group around, disrupting the mortgage experience through strategic innovation. So let me walk through this. And Anthony, feel free as my, I'm going to interview you and bring you in, and you're going to run it in a few minutes. But if you want to add some thoughts as I'm going through it, feel free to hold me up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So 3 big trends in 2015, and not just 2015, we're talking for years to come. CFPB, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Low rates, we're here, and just information overload. Everybody has so many different channels of communication, and when you think of what is selling, it's communicating. And where your customers are communicating has never changed more prolifically and more rapidly than it is right now. So let's start with CFPB. Some of you may have seen this. This is a beta that the CFPB has online, but I don't know exactly how much success they're going to have with this, but here's what I do know. I do know that the CFPB, they want to level the playing field. They want to commoditize the mortgage space, and they want everybody's interest rates to be as close to the same as possible. They want to create as much transparency for families and people that are getting into debt to understand how their rate compares to the marketplace. So that is their intention. And we already are in a very commoditized space, and the CFPB wants to make it even more commoditized. I also know that they're rolling out some new requirements, and we know this is not like, is this going to happen? We know where the puck is going. We know that every loan officer in America, as of August 1st, is going to have to quote the total cost of the loan over 5 years, and they're going to have to disclose TIP, total interest payment, which is a big number. Loan officers didn't like APR. They're really not going to like TIP. Although I make the case that it provides more transparency, and it provides more opportunity for you to be an educator and a value creator at the point of sale. So big trends. This is not really anything new. I think it's just clarifying. I was a keynote speaker at a large sales rally, and one of the consultants from PricewaterhouseCoopers was speaking before me. I love their slides, their images, their facts. And they were making the case, and again, through statistical evidence and studies that they've done, that lending, when it comes to a person's experience with a lender, good or bad, they're going to tell other people about it more than any other industry. I found that interesting. I also find it just clarifying, and this is not new, at Mortgage Coach, we've been preaching to this, evangelizing to us for some time now, that mobile is prolific. Everybody's got a mobile device. Every home buyer is using the MLS in their back pocket, and it's not just the millennials, folks. I mean, when you look at it, grandmas and grandpas are taking videos with iPads. Everybody's got a mobile device. Everybody's using smart devices, and as a mortgage professional, you need to start executing. So this is another little key fact from Pricewaterhouse, where they talk about the areas of misconsumption. And the number one place where they don't understand it, or they associate lack of understanding to a bad experience, is misleading or not understanding the rates, the fees, the cost of ownership. Again, something that everybody on this call is prepared to talk about. So I want to get to Anthony, and I'm going to get to him quick, but I want to do it under the pre-framing that there's certain things between what the CFPB is doing with what technology is doing in terms of arming mortgage professionals to deliver a better experience, and then combine that with the growing millennial population. It's like we know where the puck is going. I love this quote from Wayne Gretzky. Good hockey players play where the puck is. Great players play where it's going. The beauty is we know where the puck is going, but are you guys playing where it is, or are you playing where the puck is going? So I thought this would be some great framing for Anthony. Anthony, I'm excited to hand it over to you. Before I do that, I wanted to just call out this quote from the last time that I interviewed you. This was my big takeaway. where you made the content that sometimes versus always. Sometimes is nice, always is differentiating, defining, and a value-creating advantage. So as Anthony goes through his thoughts to help us be better salespeople, really go deep this time as you listen to Anthony. How are you going to take what you learn over the next 45 minutes and implement it consistently? You know, take it to always. So Anthony, I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself. I'll be passing you slides while you're doing that, and rock it out. Help mortgage coach professionals sell better, be better.
You did just a terrific job setting me up with your intro 10 minutes, especially talking about the commoditization of a marketplace and the change in customer expectations. And it lines us up nicely to talk about the way that I view sales and what I call level 4 value creation, which we've talked about here before. And I'm going to give you a new frame. And what we're going to talk about is, how do you sell? What's your sales technique? And Dave responded to an email I sent out, and we had a conversation about my younger brother, who is a professional stand-up comedian. So if you go see him on the road, I apologize for anything that he says that offends you, but I promise you, you will be offended because, well, he is a professional. And when he's not on the road, he practices jiu-jitsu. And he thinks jiu-jitsu is the very best martial art in the world. And all martial arts are designed to do the same thing. They're designed to have a smaller, weaker person with good technique beat a larger, stronger person. That's what it's designed to do. So we have all these forces like commoditization, where your industry is getting all this pressure for transparency, pressure for equalization of rates, all these things going on. You've got disintermediation. There used to be no access to the information that your customers want or need. Now there's ubiquitous information. They can get whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want it. And there's disintermediation. There's people stepping into the middle of the market and changing the whole shape of an industry. I mean, I saw Zillow, and there's other players like that distort the way that information is perceived, and they share things. So all these factors are at work on us. And if you want technique, the way that I look at this is mindset, skill set, toolkit. You have to have an understanding of what's going on, and you have to have the right mindset. You have to have a success-oriented mindset. You've got to have self-enabling or self-empowering beliefs instead of self-limiting beliefs. So you have to think beyond where you are now. And that's what great salespeople and great business people do. You also have to have a certain set of skills. So you have to have the ability to do some things, and then you have to have the tools to support it. And the reason you're here is because you're using Mortgage Coach as a tool. That's one of the toolkits. And I'll tell you my view of this quickly before we dive into some deeper content. You need all three of these pieces. So if you have the mindset and you have the skills, but you're not using the tools, you're not going to be as effective as you could be. And if you have the tools, but you don't have the mindset and the skill set, you got to get those, because the tools by themselves are not going to carry the day for you. So you need all three of these things. You have to pull all three of these levers at the same time to be really successful now. And I'll give you a couple of my favorite quotes. Dave started us off with some ideas about change. If you're an optimist, this quote will be fine with you, but if you're a pessimist, you're not going to like it very much. The past is going to look like a mellow prelude. Tom Peters said that in 1999. He couldn't have been more right then, and it's more true now than it's ever been. If you didn't like the disruptive change that we've gone through since 2008, you're not going to like what comes next, because we're just looking at greater disruption, more change, coming faster. My second favorite quote of all time is this one. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less, by retired U.S. General Eric Shinseki. And this is where we are as salespeople and business people today. Dave started out by saying, if you were doing what you were doing 5 years ago, you need to think about what you're doing, because the world has changed so dramatically. And then he said, even if you're doing what you were doing a year ago, you need to consider, what am I doing and what's changed? And I'm going to give you a way to think about this. And this is one of the methodologies that I teach salespeople and sales organizations. And I just got back from Amsterdam installing it in a billion-dollar company, because all companies right now and all salespeople have trouble getting out of the box. And let's start with some of these boxes. The first box is level 1. And level 1 value creation says, not great on the relationship side. This is Walmart. This is Amazon.com. And what this looks like is I'm going to try to find a way to reduce the friction in a transaction to make it as easy as possible for you to buy. I'm not going to create any greater value. Products and services are all equal, and I'm going to be a vendor for you, or I'm going to be a store that you visit. Walmart's a great example. So the challenge that you have, if you're here and you're listening to this in your market, is that the forces that Dave was talking about are trying to drive you into this box. It assumes everybody should be trying to create level 1 transactional value, and that there's no greater value to be had. So all things being equal, the rate is the most important factor, or the fees are the most important factor. It's not the service level, it's not the insight, it's not helping people make the best decision. One mortgage professional is exactly the same as the next. As long as the rates are equal, this is the box that you belong in. And if you're chafing a little bit as I say that, and maybe you're screaming at the screen saying, that's not true, we're not going to play there, we do better than that, you feel like a lot of people. The economic part is not the total value. There's relationship value too. What happened to a lot of organizations over time is they moved to level 2, which level 2 says, I'm going to give you an incredible experience, you're going to get excellent support, excellent service, and I'm going to move from a vendor to a supplier. We're going to have a different relationship. The relationship's going to be better than level 1. And this is a difficult thing to understand, but I'll try to explain it the best I can. Every level transcends and includes the level before it. So it's better than level 1, but it still has to include level 1. So maybe you have a great product, a great service, and you give people a great experience. You've got great support, great service. It's totally different. It feels way better than the people who are solely transactional. But that just moves us on the relationship continuum. It doesn't create a great deal of economic value to be in that box. So we move up to level 3. This is probably where B2B sales organizations have been for at least 2 decades. We got to this point where we could talk about return on investment. We can probably show you some math. We can show you tangible business outcomes. And we move from vendor to supplier to preferred vendor. Now I'm back to sort of being in a transactional relationship, but it's better than it was at level 1 or level 2. Still have a great product, still have a great service, but now you can actually prove it. We got stuck here, and what's happened to people who sell to other B2C organizations, which would make you B2B, is we got to this point where we're commoditized now here. So you can create value, your competitor can create value, and if you've ever heard the customer say, what makes you different, you know that you've been commoditized. If they can't immediately see and feel that difference, you know you're in an industry that's been completely commoditized, which most have, and the forces that Dave talked about are still driving that commoditization. So what's the way out? The way out is to just move one step to the right and get to what I call level 4. This means I'm strategic, I'm proactive, and I hold this box called trusted advisor. And you'll recognize yourself as level 4 with some of your clients right now. If you think about the client who says, you know, Anthony, I would never make a move. I would never think about a mortgage. I would never think about this kind of relationship without talking to Dave Savage. Dave Savage is my guy. He's going to tell me what the right answer is here. I can't do anything until I talk to him. That's how you know you've got that box staked out. If your customer or client is not willing to make a decision without you, you own mind share. And mind share is the most important thing. It allows you to be strategic. It allows you to be proactive. And it's a higher level of value that you're creating. It's not about the transaction. It's about the lifetime value of the customer in all the transactions. It's not about the product or the service. It's about driving strategic outcomes and really helping somebody. Dave, I'm going to stop here and give you a chance to weigh in if you want to.
Yeah, hey, this is great. So I guess where I would like, excuse me there, where I would like to weigh in is I talk to so many loan officers that really fit into 2 categories. Either one, they're closing less than 5 loans consistently a month, and when it comes to delivering, you know, real strategic value to a borrower. And again, from my perspective, if you're not delivering a total cost analysis to every borrower, you might have won the loan, they might have trusted you, they might be moving forward, but you have not maximized the educational experience and the value that you create for them. Because if you're working with a first-time home buyer, and you have not done a first-time, a rent versus own analysis, you've not maximized the educational value. If you're working with a person who's moving up into a bigger home, and you have not gone through and done more than just mortgage options, shown them the value in net worth they're going to gain to move up, you have not maximized the value. So I talk to so many loan officers that are, below 5 loans a month, and they just say, I don't have time. Okay, that's the biggest objection I hear. And then I talk to some loan officers that are super successful, and they are building that trust and that confidence, but they're still not delivering the maximum strategic value every single time. So I guess I just, when you really listen to Anthony, and he still has a lot more to share as we go through today, if you are on this call and you are delivering a mortgage coach total cost to each and every borrower, you're delivering the maximum strategic value that you can give between a loan officer and a borrower, at least from a number standpoint. Loan options, quantifying the value of their decision, and educating them. The last mortgage coach strategy I want to add in there before Anthony goes on is the concept of helping people, educating them on how they can pay off their debt faster, whether that's through prepaying their mortgage or whether that's through investing the difference and accumulating assets so that paying off their mortgage is a strategic financial planning decision. I just want you to think of level 5 from a mortgage coach, or level 4 from a mortgage coach perspective. It's when you are not satisfied until you've delivered the maximum educational value to that customer to help them manage their mortgage appropriately and to manage it in a way that achieves their financial goals. It's not about just winning the business, winning the referral. It's more than that. So, Anthony, I'll let you continue. That's just a big passion of mine, to get loan officers delivering the maximum value every time they're up to bat.
That's actually the first tenet of 7 in the level 4 value creation structure. I mean, you have to create the maximum value. And let me tell you what happens if you don't. If you don't, you move back into level 3, and you have a whole bunch of competitors that can pay at level 3. So leading with value is the first tenet. The second one is caring, and caring is the heart of trust. So, Dave, you said something that's something that I challenge people on, and that's, I don't have time to do this. And the fact of the matter is, you don't have time not to do these things. You do not have time not to serve your customer as well as you can, because if you don't, someone else will. There are people out there who will try to serve them better than you, and it's what's in your heart. I mean, is it your intention to close a deal, or is it your intention to help someone make the best deal that they can and give them the best insight they can? And the deeper you care about making sure they get that outcome, the more people will recognize you as the trusted advisor, and the less work you're going to have to do to sell anything, because people are going to say, this person's looking after me, and they're going to help make sure that I'm okay. So this is the box that you have to get to. This is the area that you want to stake out, this level 4. And when I challenge sales organizations, and I'll challenge you to think about this, just think about your last 5 transactions. Were you at level 4 with them? And if I ask them, would you call Dave for the next loan without looking at anybody else, regardless of rate, all other things being equal? If the answer is yes, great, you're at level 4. But if you were delivering level 2 or you were delivering level 3, I want to challenge you to think about what you can do better. So let's talk about what you can do better, and let's talk about techniques. So the first thing I think I'll give you is some changes that have gone on in the world of selling. You have to move from transactional to consultative. And you can't think about the individual transaction with a customer or a client. You have to think about the lifetime value of that customer and that relationship, and you have to behave in a way that's very consultative. You have to move away from selling product to selling strategic outcomes. And I can give you a loan, or I can help you make the best decision for your family. Now, those are 2 very different outcomes. You can be self-oriented and say, I'm a closer, I'm here to make sure that they sign on the line that is dotted, or you can be other-oriented and say, I'm going to make sure that they make a good decision and that they follow through and they actually get the outcome that they wanted. You can be reactive and wait for people to say, I have a problem, or you can be proactive and say, look, I recognize you have a problem. And you have to move just from simple execution to being accountable for those outcomes, and from responding to opportunities to creating opportunities, which means we move back in the process and help people more. I'm going to skip forward to a couple slides that I use to help people understand when we talk about sales technique and we talk about delivering level 4 value, the first thing you have to recognize is that buyers go through a process on their own. They have this psychological process that starts with dissatisfaction. And the way you serve somebody when they're not dissatisfied and where they're treating you like a transaction is to make them dissatisfied. So you have to push back and help them understand what their real needs are. I'm going to skip forward just to tell a quick story. I've had a number of occasions in the last couple years where I've had a prospective customer come to me all the way in level 3 evaluation. They've already gone on the internet, they shopped around, they looked at different competitors, and they came in saying, give us an RFP response, give us your quote, and we're going to evaluate you against your peers and make a decision. And what I had to do is push them back, because if they're already at evaluation, I did nothing to create value. And the way that you create value is in helping people understand what they should be dissatisfied about, and then helping them recognize what they really need. So what I did is I pushed back, and I'll give you just 2 quick stories. One, a major insurance company called a business that I own about 5 or 6 years ago. And they said, we would like you to fill out an RFP. And I said, thank you very much, but we'd rather pass on this RFP. You've been with the same group of people for 15 years. They're a great company. There's no reason that we could see that would cause you to leave. And they said, actually, we're unhappy, and in fact, we are going to leave. We are going to make changes. And I pushed back again, and I said, well, even if you were, you work with companies that measure their revenue in billions. We measure ours in tens of millions. You're not going to hire a boutique firm like ours. And they said, yeah, actually, we are considering a boutique firm. We want a greater touch than we've ever had before. And I said, well, with all due respect, I've never met anybody at the company, so there's no reason that they should ever trust us with their business. They don't even know us. And the person giving me the RFP said, listen, if I can get you a meeting with the buying committee, would you fill out the RFP? And I said, absolutely. Once I got to the buying committee, I asked them where they were and what was causing them to change, because the value that I could create happens around the dissatisfaction. What did they not know that they needed to know? What could I teach them about their market that they didn't understand, so that I could position myself as that trusted advisor, as somebody with the insight, as somebody with the ability to help them get a better outcome? And that starts up here. It doesn't start down here in the evaluation stage. So we have to push people back and ask enough questions to uncover real dissatisfaction, or what I'll show you in a minute, to create it. So when you think about your sales technique and you get that call, the first object for you in this client engagement is to uncover dissatisfaction, or what we'll talk about in a minute, create it. But if they have this dissatisfaction, the value that you create is on listening and understanding and getting that dissatisfaction out, so you can teach them what they should be thinking about as they go through this decision-making process. In your case, in one of the biggest decisions and most expensive decisions anyone will ever make. When they move around this cycle and they're starting to recognize their needs, you help them with a needs analysis. You help them by asking them questions that help them codify or figure out what it is exactly do they need. What kind of a house do they need? Is it the right amount of money? How's this money going to change over time for them? You have all these tools to help them recognize what they really need. That's how you create value. So as you think about this move from dissatisfaction to recognition, you're identifying the problems and challenges, and then you're helping them figure out what do they need to solve that. This is what they want. How do I solve my challenge? If you don't know what the compelling issue is for your customer, you haven't done a good job through this process. So when I ask you, Dave, why is this customer going to buy from you? Why are they going to buy? What's going to cause them to change? What's going to cause them to take action now? And you can't tell me, listen, they're compelled by, they need this because if they don't, this is going to happen. Then you don't really know what their needs are. And if you don't know that, you're really operating at level 1 or level 2, and it's starting to look like a transaction. So you got to go deep with people. When you get to the evaluation, this is where you show people what their options are. Mortgage Coach is a tool that you can use, but you have other tools where you can say, look, you could go this direction or you could go this direction. Let me show you what the trade-offs are. And then let me show you how I'm going to help you through that process so I can differentiate me and my offering from everyone else. And now let me give you this last piece because it's really important. Everybody goes through this process. everybody. It doesn't matter what you're buying. You're dissatisfied, you recognize a gap, you figure out what you need, you evaluate your options, you resolve your concerns. Most salespeople give up right here after evaluation. We present our numbers, and then we wait, and the customer has concerns. Well, I really didn't understand that. Is that too much money? Is that going to be right for me? What if something happens? Are they cheating me? Should I be looking for a better rate? If you're not there when they go through this process of resolving their own concerns, they come to a decision on their own, and that means they come to that decision without the real information that they need that you could have provided them had you taken control of this process and said, listen, I'm giving you these numbers. I want you to sit down and talk to your family about that. Let me know what you're thinking about, and I want to get us scheduled to talk tomorrow afternoon because I know you're going to have questions, and I want to make sure that I serve you all the way through your buying decision here and that I make sure you have all the information you need to come to a good decision. This is how your sales technique needs to change. You need to look, instead of looking through your process, look at it through the buyer's process. Where are they? These are psychological things that we go through. We start with dissatisfaction. We try to identify what we need. We try to evaluate our options, and then we resolve our concerns. A few months ago, I gave a workshop, and I had a girl in the workshop say to me, not everybody buys because they're dissatisfied. And I said, well, I believe that's true, so tell me what you see that's different. And she said, I buy $800 Jimmy Choo shoes, and I'm not dissatisfied when I buy those shoes. And I said, well, where are you wearing these shoes? And she said, well, I'm wearing them to a wedding in 2 weeks. And I said, what if somebody looks better than you? She said, ain't nobody going to look better than me at that wedding. And there's the heart of the dissatisfaction from her. She has to look better than anyone else, and she can't imagine living with that kind of pain. So it all starts here, and this is the process. Dave, I'm going to bring you in before I get to one other slide on the buying cycle.
Okay, so you're bringing me in now.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry about that. So I mean, the only thoughts I have here is just the concept that when you think of the questions that you ask the buyer, it's not the first question where you get to the value and the dissatisfaction. It's the question after the questions. It's the questions that when you come to a conversation with a heart of curiosity and you really want to understand where are the goals that making a good mortgage decision can impact. You know, when you ask questions like, how old do you want to be when your mortgage is paid off? Again, a question that most loan officers would never ask a home buyer because they just want to get to the loan advice and make a recommendation. And that's an important question. You know, people, you know, it's a 35-year-old, they'll say, I want to be 55. And that's valuable, but the most valuable question to really create the gap is, well, based on the loan that you're in right now or the loan that we're getting you, how old are you going to be? And now, you know, typically when you ask that series of questions, there's a gap. There's a 5 to 10-year gap from where they want to be, from where they're going to be. And now you have positioned yourself so that when you're delivering mortgage advice, every other loan officer is going to be selling rate and payment, and you are going to be showing them how they can make a mortgage decision and a decision that helps them achieve their goals faster, paying off their mortgage within the goal that they have. You know, lots of times a mortgage coach loan officer, let's just call it a value-creating loan officer, is you know, they're still selling 30-year fixed-rate loans, but they're helping the borrower, hey, if you paid an extra $150 a month, you could achieve that financial goal of yours and have your home paid off by the age of 55. So just think to yourselves, what are the questions you're asking that position you as an advisor, and are you asking the level 2 and the level 3 questions so you really get to the pain and you really create the gap? One last thought before I throw it back to Anthony. I would love for you guys just as a community to start throwing in some of the questions you're asking in the go-to-meeting question. What questions are you asking that are pain-bearing questions, that are creating gaps, that are creating dissatisfaction? What questions are you asking right now that fit within that category? Anthony, you're up.
That's a great question, and that gets us to another view of the buying cycle. So the buying, it always operates that way. People go through these things, but in a lot of cases, what Dave described, customers don't know they should be dissatisfied. They think that the only option is a 15 or a 30-year mortgage. And when you ask the question that says, how old do you want to be when you pay off your home, and I say 55 and my 30-year loan says 65, you've just created dissatisfaction for me. Now I'm hoping and I'm trusting that you're going to have the answer to help me figure out how I get that outcome that I want, and no other loan officer has asked me that question before. So now you've differentiated, and you've asked me the tough question, and one of the tenets of Level 4 value creation is this. If you want to be a trusted advisor, you have to have difficult conversations. You've got to be willing to talk about that dissatisfaction and create this gap so that you can identify that better future state. And if I say it's 55 and you say, look, you're going to have to pay $200 a month more, now I know what my plan needs to look like, and I can start figuring out how I get there. Does that mean I put more money down? Does it mean I put less money down so I can fund it in a different way? There's all these choices available to me. As somebody who doesn't buy homes all the time, it doesn't work in your space, we don't know what choices are available to us. So this second view of this process is create the dissatisfaction through your questions, build consensus, ask questions that say, does this look like we're going the right way? Is this the right answer for you and your family? If the husband or wife is making the decision together, bring them in on the phone and have this conversation. And here's what we know. If you follow this and you create the dissatisfaction and you ask the best questions because you have the best sales technique, and you create dissatisfaction in the right areas by figuring out what your customer cares about, you eliminate the evaluation of options. This is what we know. When you do this and you behave this way, most of the time you generate so much trust that they don't feel like they have to go look for a cheaper rate, or they don't have to go look and shop for what you're offering to sell them. They still resolve concerns at the end. We don't lose that piece. They still have that little shred of fear and doubt that everybody has when they make a major purchase. Is this the right price? Am I doing right? Should I be worried about something else that I haven't thought about? Either you help them through that piece, and that has to be part of your sales technique, or somebody else does. And that is they come to the decision on their own, or they go out and start seeking help from somebody else who's going to be there to give them the answers they need. This is my favorite quote of all time by the greatest American philosopher, Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Most buyers think they know what they're doing, and they think, well, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then they get hurt because they need our help and we're not there serving them. I just want to tell you, when I work with big companies, I want to share with you what happens in some people's buying cycle is they're dissatisfied. They figure out what they need on their own. They go onto the internet. They start evaluating on their own. They look and see, can I figure out who to trust? They resolve that concern on their own, and then they call you. This eliminates the ability for you to create value. It just totally eliminates the ability for you to create value. You have to get them back through that process, because if you don't, you're going to look like a commodity and you're going to be playing at level 1. Pushing back and saying, I have to restart this process because I missed this part where you understood what your dissatisfaction was and determine your needs, because that's the way that I can help you most. That's where the value starts to happen. And that means you build or capture the dissatisfaction, you collaborate with them around their needs, you help them build consensus around what the right answer is, you evaluate the options together, you resolve the concerns, and then that target enters into that buying stage of their process. So you have to make a decision. How are you going to interact with your buyer? What's your technique going to be? I see a lot of salespeople and a lot of sales organizations following this path. There's no opportunity for value creation, and then they call me and they say, Anthony, my salespeople suck, they don't know how to close, and they don't know how to negotiate. And it's not true that they don't know how to close and they don't know how to negotiate. It's just that they're following a process that eliminates the value creation. And when we reset the process, it turns out they're pretty good at asking for the commitments, and they're pretty good at finding a way to capture the right value. But it has to look more like this than this. I want to tell you this last piece about level 4 quickly. You get to capture the value between the price of something and your customer's willingness to pay. And the more value that you create, the more you're allowed to capture some of that value. And the less value that you create, the less value there is for you to capture. So you're always going to get pushback if you're not creating enough value. You're always going to have somebody go shop if your technique is not to create the maximum value. So I want to go back to something that Dave said. At the beginning of this, we started talking about sometimes and always. And are you using the tool? If you're not using the tool and you're not creating maximum value, you're missing the opportunity to drive a wedge between your competitors and your customer. And if you're not creating maximum value, they're right to go out and shop to say, hey, all things being equal, I'm going to find somebody who's going to have lower closing costs or whatever the case might be. All things being equal, they're right to move down and try to pay as low a price as possible. But when you're using the tools and you're adding your insight, when you're bringing new ideas and you're acting as that trusted advisor, standing behind them with your hand on their shoulder, helping guide them to the right decision, you're increasing the willingness to pay and you're decreasing the likelihood that your customer goes and shops. This is what level 4 value creation is about. This is why I talk about it so much, because people like you, people in sales, people trying to grow their business are struggling because we are being commoditized. We are being disintermediated. It's incredibly difficult to differentiate on features and benefits and rates because everybody has the same things. But your willingness to create more value is what's going to differentiate you and give you the opportunity to compete in a different way. Dave, I'll bring you back in.
So thanks for bringing me back in. So first of all, man, this call is fantastic. I'm getting lots of great feedback, both on my iPhone. I've got a number of text comments. I've had a lot of great comments in the GoToMeeting. So far, I've got a lot of comments saying how great the call is. I've had one question from Dan Keller, a regular in the call, where he really wants to talk about what are some of the questions, the pain-bearing questions that we can ask a realtor to uncover that dissatisfaction. So I want to throw that out to the community. And by the way, I also want to challenge you, Dan. Let's start as a community of some of the best loan officers in America who are on this call right now. Let's start throwing out what are some of the questions that we can ask if it's a borrower, identified as a borrower, if it's realtor, to get to the pain. Although I guess I want to emphasize what Anthony said, you've got to be willing to have some constructive tension. You've got to be willing to push to get to that pain. And you've got to, and again, Anthony, you're bold. I've been in similar situations. I've only been as bold a few times, and more times than not, I've caved in and either filled out the RFP or I've given a proposal before I've really created value. And I think just about every time I ever caved in, I didn't win. It didn't pay off. And so I think as everybody, let's come up with those questions, but let's also really understand that it's about how focused are that when we get into a quality sales conversation with a high-value borrower or a high-value referral partner, come in there prepared to get to the thing. You know, that is your target. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to push. I'm going to find out where they're dissatisfied. And then I am going to just laser focus in on those areas of dissatisfaction. And I'm going to, align my value proposition, again, in a sincere way. We're not talking about making up things and inventing your product into vaporware. But everybody on this call, we're the best loan officers in the country. We know how to deliver value within the mortgage experience. We just don't do it consistently and aggressively enough with each and every client. So let's keep this flowing. But please, Dan Keller, I push out to you, add some questions. And all the other mortgage coaches on the call right now, let's start throwing some questions in. So as I net out this call at the end, I've kind of thrown out, here's a question. And again, Anthony, if you have any, kind of generic suggestions around if we're working with a strategic referral partner, some questioning that we could go through to get to the pain.
I'll just give you one little idea about that. The first thing I would do if I had to come up with that list of questions is I would start with a list of all the pain that I've understood realtors to have in the past. I would want to know what are their biggest challenges with their customers. And then I would want to say, what's my solution to that? And what's the insight that I can share so that they understand I've got a process and a methodology and the ability not just to say, oh, I can speak to the problem, but that I can prove I know how to get them a better result than they're getting. So I always do it with what I call a solution chart, which is to say, what's the pain and how do they describe it? I want to know in business terms. What do they say? Customers are hard to get qualified. Okay, cool. What's your process to making sure it's easy for customers to get qualified? whatever the case may be. I don't know all the challenges that they have, but if you were to make a list of all the pain points, you could very quickly develop a set of what I call power questions by buying cycle stage. So I always think about where are they in this stage. Let me just give you an example so that you have something to work with here. If I go to any VP of sales at any company and say, how are your sales cycle times? I'm going to get an answer, they could be better. If I say, how are your pipelines? Is your pipeline full enough that you're 100% confident you can make your goal this quarter and next quarter? I'm 100% confident I'm going to get an answer that creates pain. If I say, do your salespeople have the business acumen and situational knowledge to create value for their customers in every interaction, I'm going to get an answer something like, what are you, have you lost your mind? Of course they don't. You know, I know the questions to ask to get them to share with me the pain points that they have, and so that they know that I understand where the real action is in their world. And that's how you view this, is think about where they are. When they're thinking about their needs, I ask them questions to make sure that I understand how what I do aligns with what they want. So you think about the buying cycle, and if you think about the buying cycle, it will help you serve the customer with questions that are going to differentiate you.
So guys, I just want to kind of start the riffing here, guys. When you think of first-time home buyers, I mean, every realtor knows working with first-time home buyers is like herding cats. So when you know, again, I'm just throwing, you know, coming off of what Anthony said, if you know do you work with first-time home buyers, and do you find it a challenge that they're like herding cats, and it's difficult from the time that they start looking at homes to the time that they're really ready to make an offer and close a deal? Do you have that happen? Well, you know, of course that happens. Great. How are you currently helping them understand the financial value in a personal way to buying that home, so that they see the urgency? They're excited about buying the home because they clearly understand the financial impact and how much more net worth they're going to gain and what their tax benefits are as a result of owning. How are you currently communicating that to your first-time home buyers? There you go, guys. So I mean, there's one idea, but guys, there's 5 of them. So Dan Keller, I know you're on this call. Let's you and I provide some leadership, and then all you other mortgage coaches start throwing in some ideas on how we can get to the pain-bearing questions, and then have a challenger sales conversation with a real estate agent that really differentiates you and really cuts to the heart of it. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I would just say, I'll just zip through this last slide just to say, I think this is the decision you have to make. You either work on mindshare, or you end up on a spreadsheet with somebody looking at your rates versus somebody else's rates. That's the game that we're playing, and I want to be measured, if it's up to me, on trust, on my customer orientation, on my ideas, on the confidence that I can execute, that I'm going to be accountable, that I'm going to help build consensus. These are the intangible, of the invisible forces that are always at work in every deal, and they don't show up on a spreadsheet. But that's only true if we play in a way that allows us to create so much value that we don't end up on the spreadsheet, and that's all about mindshare. I'll say this too, if this content helps you, and I can help you any other way, you can either go to thesalesblog.com and sign up for the newsletter, or you can text the word value to 44144, and that'll add you to the list too.
So I cannot recommend reading Anthony's blog, his content, being on his list enough. You know, we all know that there's no shortage of content, insights, thought leaders out there, things for us to read on our mobile devices. There's no shortage. So much of it is noise, and so much of it, and so little of it is really signal and value. Everything Anthony pushes out is value. I mean, I read his newsletter every time it comes out, and at least half of them, I get something that's actionable and something I want to share with the team. And everybody who's on this call, you know, obviously, you know, several times a year I'm asking them to come in and share with us, because I think it's important that we bring in people like Anthony who are outside of our industry, who are experts in helping big businesses, multi-billion-dollar sales forces become exceptional salespeople. Great person to come in and bring leadership to the mortgage coach community, helping you guys really understand how to go from price to advice. Don't just be a rate quoter. an app taker, you know, and again, I know everybody on this call, you pay, you're on the mortgage coach team, or the CEO of your company pays for you to be here, but I'm all about, are you implementing and executing that with every borrower? And every time you're meeting with a realtor or referral partner, are you really positioning yourself as a value creator? So Anthony, let's you and I riff for about 10 minutes here. I want to wrap up. We've got 10 minutes left in the call. I do want to challenge everybody to come up with, and by the way, can you confirm you can see my screen? I can. Okay, great. So this was actually part of Darren's conversation yesterday here in Hawaii. I'm in Hawaii at the, again, I think I said the Achieving Leadership Excellence event, which I hope to see some of you guys here next year. But, you know, what are the 5 to 10 questions that you're asking your borrowers and that you're asking your realtors that, you know, help you tailor what it is that you're going to present, really personalize the presentation and the information and the value that you're going to create, and to do that in a way that bears pain on their end. So I would love Dan Keller, anybody else on here that creates, these are my 5 to 10 questions, please forward those over to me. And at next week's call, it will be a nice lead-in to what I'm doing with Darren. We'll talk about some of these calls. Now, I'll think about how I'm going to do the realtor piece, because you guys I'm going to have hundreds of realtors on next week's call. And my goal is that every loan officer who brings a realtor, you're getting more referrals because of that. You're having more success because of that. So I'll figure out how to position that in next week's call. So as we net out this call, you know, I want to ask yourself that when you're delivering rates and fees pre-GFE, you know, before the good faith estimate to win the business, are you doing it in a way that is unique, in a way that delivers value? Are you a trusted advisor? Because if every single buyer that you're working with is not getting a link that gives them mobile advice, a total cost analysis on their mobile device, then one, you're not delivering the maximum transparency, and you're not delivering the maximum value. You know, are you a modern loan officer that when you look at the opportunity that we're having with millennials, and by the way, you know, when you think of how millennials live on their mobile devices, it's not just millennials. I mean, I said this, and Kristen, who I had on the call last week, I loved her quote where she said, if someone spoke Spanish, would you communicate? If you communicated in their native language, would you earn trust better? Would you deliver more value? Well, the answer is, of course, yes. They would like me more. They would trust me more. Well, most of the population speaks digital. They live on digital. So when you're able to deliver advice and insight in their native language, which is digital, you're gonna be able to do better business. So are you providing that narrative, video or audio, so that every stakeholder in the transaction, we all know that the husband has a wife. If you talk to the husband and you didn't talk to the wife, it's not too late. Create a mortgage coach audio or video and deliver that. So again, my push for everybody on this call is 2015 is a time of change, and we know that the CFPB has some aggressive customer educational goals that's going to further commoditize the business. We know that cost of loan over 5 years in TIP is a future requirement. Let's start making sure we're delivering that with each and every borrower. At Mortgage Coach, we've already delivered millions of mortgage experiences, and we want to be delivering millions of mortgage experience each and every year. So again, I'm going to close out today's call, although we're not closing it, because I am going to have a few minutes for some Q&A with Anthony. But we know where the puck is going. Hopefully everybody on this call is going to just raise the game and go to it. So again, don't miss next week's call with Darren. Make sure you post it on your social network. However you share with your realtors, share it, like it, get the book. And then again, one last reminder, if anybody has an executive of your company going to the LAMA event today and tomorrow, I would love to make sure they get some time with Joe Pator so that we can have Mortgage Coach integrated into your platform. So Anthony, you've been amazing, brother. As always, you deliver massive value and insight. You know, where would you, as we close out this call, what are some last thoughts you think we should wrap it up around? And I'll go through the Q&A and go to meeting and see if I can get a question from the audience.
Sure. I think the best thing that I can say is think about your sales technique. Think about the value that you bring to every single sales interaction that you have, and how are you going to create the most value, more value than anybody else in your space in that interaction. So you think about getting to level 4, which means what insights do I have to be prepared to share? You think about where are they in their buying cycle, and then how do I help get them to the right spot for me to create value? And think about the questions that you ask that are going to create that gap and open up that dissatisfaction that positions you as that level 4 value creator and as somebody who is the right person to act as a trusted advisor as they go through one of the biggest decisions they'll make in their life.
Beautiful. So if anybody has a last question, I noticed a few questions that want to make sure they had Anthony's information. So as you guys can see, I'm cutting and pasting that, and I'm putting it into the chat. So if you look in your chat section, there will be how to get that information, how to get more from Anthony. Also, I want to push a quick poll. Let us know what you thought of today's call on a level of good to great. If you are a guest and you were invited by a mortgage coach and you would like to get a demo on Mortgage Coach and just learn more about exactly what we do, just check that last column. But let us know, did we wow you? Did we surpass your expectations on today's call? Did you get some solid takeaways, or did we just hit average? And it was another week of Mortgage Coach value. So if you could, over the next 4 minutes as we wrap up this call, let us know what you thought. So Anthony, I do want to make sure we make it actionable so that people can really create a list of pain-bearing questions that get to the challenge with realtors. So if you can repeat one last time, what is your advice? And if you do have some questions, let us know what it is.
Let me say this in probably the easiest way for people to get their heads around. Think about that buying cycle, and I need to get them into dissatisfaction. So what are the things right now that your customers don't know and don't understand well enough that you could ask questions that help open up that gap, and then you could close the gap for them? So if it's how do you deal with first-time home buyers, if that's a question that gets that started, then what's my answer? How do I help you with that? So I would say, what are the pain points that they're going to have automatically, and then what are the questions that you ask to get that pain point out on the table? And some could be as direct as saying, tell me about your strategy to deal with first-time home buyers, or how do we help, or how do you help customers who have a difficult time getting financed? Whatever the question might be that creates that gap, as long as you can step into that void and teach them how to solve that problem, that's the right question for you to ask. That is the value-creating question that helps them get somewhere that they can't get without you and without your advice.
Love it. And kind of my last thought as we're wrapping up today's call, drive an experience. Ask a great question. If you're in a Starbucks and let's say you ask a question about the first-time home buyer or the move-up, and now you're going to explain to them, how you deliver advice and value is different and better. Don't just tell them, show them. Pull out your mobile device and walk them through, hey, let me show you a couple that came to me 2 weeks ago, Danny and Susan Smith, the realtor, whatever. Tell them a sincere story around how you helped someone and show them what you delivered and how you delivered it. So you're asking great questions. You're explaining what you do, and you're showing what you do at the same time. Really powerful, really valuable. So folks, we're going to wrap up this call. Hope to see hundreds of you on the call with Darren Hardy. Hope that you'll invite your realtors and everybody you know and all the mortgage coaches in your office. And Anthony, as always, you knocked it out of the park and you delivered huge value to our community. I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Look forward to the next call together. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.